In order to correct a winged scapula, what we want to do is strengthen the muscles that are responsible for medially tilting the scapula and for posteriorly tilting the scapula. The 5 exercises that we're going to be demonstrating and the 5 muscles that we're going to be strengthening are going to be for the Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to be your own therapist by demonstrating the top 5 strengthening exercises for a winged scapula. A winged scapula is essentially when the shoulder blade or your scapula moves away from the rib cage. And to give you an example of how exactly that looks, I'm going to enlist in the help of my good friend Johnny Bones. So Johnny, get over here, turn your back to the camera, and this right over here is your scapula. It's your shoulder blade. And what happens is when you get a winged scapula, it could present in many ways, but most commonly what's going to happen is you are going to get a lateral tilt of the scapula. And when you get a lateral tilt, what that means is the medial border is going to move away from the actual rib cage. You will also get something like an anterior tilt of the scapula. When you get anteriorly tilting, what happens is the inferior angle is going to move away from the rib cage. So in order to correct a winged scapula, what we want to do is strengthen the muscles that are responsible for medially tilting the scapula and for posteriorly tilting the scapula. The 5 exercises that we're going to be demonstrating and the 5 muscles that we're going to be strengthening are going to be for the Serratus anterior, the rhomboid major and minor, the middle trapezius, the lower or inferior trapezius muscle, and the latissimus dorsi muscle. None of these muscles are directly responsible for medially tilting or posteriorly tilting the scapula. However, when the scapula is winged and it moves away from the rib cage, then they turn into medial tilters and they turn into posteriorly tilters of the scapula. And one of the things with regard to a winged scapula is if you end up getting a lot of shoulder pain, mid-back pain, it could be due to a winged scapula. So if you correct this, it can greatly alleviate your symptoms of shoulder pain, mid-back pain. And another thing is it's not always going to be due to weakness in a muscle. It could also be due to a very tight muscle, in which case we would want to do some myofascial stretching, or it could be nerve related. If you end up getting some impingements, then that could also affect it. And for something like that, some Aldoa exercises would be beneficial, but we'll be getting into those later on. For now, let's go ahead and demonstrate the top 5 exercises for scapular winging. The first exercise to correct scapular winging is going to be a strengthening exercise for the serratus anterior. And with regard to the serratus anterior, depending on how exactly we play with our hand positions, we could target different fibers. The lower we go, we're going to target more the superior fibers, and then the higher up we go with our arms, we're going to target more the inferior fibers. When trying to correct for a winged scapula, ideally, we would want to strengthen the inferior fibers because the inferior fibers attach not only to the medial border of the scapula, they also attach to the inferior angle. So not only is it going to be responsible for medially tilting the scapula, it's also going to be responsible for posteriorly tilting the scapula, which are the 2 dysfunctions when you get scapular winging. So I'm going to show you the exercises right now. Basically what you want to do is you are going to get into a quadruped position, so 4 points on your hands and knees. From this position right over here, if we want to strengthen the inferior fibers, meaning the ones lower down, we want to place our humerus above the angle of the shoulder. So what we want to do is we're going to get in our 4-point position. We're going to elevate our arms above the level of our shoulders, and then we are going to push our palms away from our body in order to protract the scapula. And this right over here is how we would strengthen the serratus anterior, specifically the inferior fibers of the serratus anterior. With regard to the other things, one thing worth noting, we want to keep a neutral spine, we want to keep our chin tucked in, the crown of the head is pushing away, and then with our eyes, we're looking down at the floor to put the dura mater under tension. But next, the exercise that we're going to be covering is going to be for the rhomboid major and minor. With regard to the rhomboid major and minor, the rhomboid's main action is going to be retraction of the scapula. So what we want to do for this one, we're going to be in a prone position, meaning we're going to be on our stomachs. To target the rhomboid major, we want to get our humerus at the level of the glenohumeral angle. The glenohumeral angle is when your humerus moves, the scapula moves with it. So if you are doing this on a Kleiner patient, you can palpate the scapula, raise the arm, and see when they move together. That's going to be the glenohumeral angle, and that's going to be the angle that you use when you are performing the rhomboid major. I'm going to demonstrate it right now. So we're lying down on our stomach. Our chin, we're going to pin our chin to the floor. The reason we're pinning our chin to the floor is because when our chin is pinned to the floor, we are getting into cervical extension. And when we go into cervical extension, we are going to put the levator scapulae muscle on slack, and that's going to allow for greater recruitment of the rhomboid major muscle. So we're on our stomach, chin is pinned to the ground, our arm is at the level of the glenohumeral angle. If you are doing this on your own and you don't know where exactly that is, when you straighten out your arms, when your hands are at the level of your forehead or slightly higher, that's roughly going to be the area that you want to be in. So let's go ahead and do the exercise. And then from here, all we want to do is raise our arms as high as possible off the ground, and then we're going to retract our shoulder blades by squeezing them together. And that is the strengthening exercise for the rhomboid major. Next, if we want to target the rhomboid minor, what we would do is we would elevate our arms a little bit more, so we would go a little bit more into abduction, abduction. When we are doing the rhomboid minor, we want to be above the level of the glenohumeral angle, anywhere from 135 degrees of abduction to just above the level of the glenohumeral angle. So what we're going to do from this position right over here, everything else is the same. We're going to just raise our arms a little bit higher. And it's the exact same. We're raising our hands as high off the ground as possible and squeezing our shoulder blades. That way we can retract the scapula. And that is the second variation. That is the strengthening exercise for the rhomboid minor. Next, we're going to end up doing the third exercise for scapular winging, which is going to be for the middle trapezius. With regard to the middle trapezius fibers run horizontally. So for this one, what we want to do is bring our arms below the level of the glenohumeral angle, and we're pretty much doing the exact same thing. We're in a prone position, so we are on our stomach. Our chin is pinned to the ground. That way we can put some slack on the levator scapulae muscle and get greater recruitment of the middle trapezius muscle, and everything else is exactly the same. So you're lying down, chin is pinned to the ground, arms are below the level of the glenohumeral angle, and then we are raising our hands and as high as we can off the ground and squeezing the shoulder blades together. And that is the strengthening exercise for the middle trapezius. Next, the fourth exercise for scapular winging is going to be for the inferior trapezius, or the lower traps. With regard to this exercise right over here, the inferior fibers of the trapezius are primarily going to be responsible for retraction of the scapula and depression of the scapula. So what we want to do is bring the inferior angle of the scapula down toward the opposite glute. The way we're going to do that is we're going to lie down in the same position. We're in prone on our stomach, chin is pinned to the ground to put some slack on the levator scapulae muscle, and then our arms are down by our sides. We're going to have our palms facing the ceiling, and then imagine that you're trying to bring your arms into the opposite back pocket. So what we want to do for this one, again, on your stomach, chin pinned to the ground, arms down by your side with the palms facing up, and then we're going to raise our hands as high as we can and squeeze the shoulder blades together. So we're depressing the scapula by pressing down and then squeezing the shoulder blades together to get that retraction of the scapula, as though we're trying to bring our hands into our opposite pockets. And that was the fourth exercise for scapular winging. That was for the inferior trapezius, or the lower traps. The fifth and final strengthening exercise for scapular winging is going to be for the latissimus dorsi muscle. And with regard to the latissimus dorsi, it has three main actions. It mainly does adduction of the humerus, extension of the humerus, and medial rotation of the humerus. So the ways that we can strengthen them, one is going to be with a lat pull down. With a lat pull down, if we end up doing a wide grip pull down, what's going to happen is we are going to strengthen the latissimus dorsi with the main action being adduction of the humerus. So we just want to pull the bar down to the top of the sternum, and while we're pulling it down, we want to make sure that our shoulder blades remain retracted, and also we keep the scapula depressed. And this is the lat pull down. And then another way that we could strengthen the latissimus dorsi is going to be with a narrow grip pull down. When we do a narrow grip pull down, because our elbows are tucked in and we're pulling straight down, instead of working on adduction of the humerus, we are working on the component of extension of the humerus. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to grab the D handle, keep the elbows tucked in, and we want to pull the bar down to the top of the sternum and then come right back up to the top. And this is the narrow grip pull down for the latissimus dorsi muscle. With regard to the number of sets and repetitions, when we are trying to correct scapular winging, we want to be able to accumulate enough time under tension, as with any other time we're working on a postural fault. So what we want to do for this exercise right over here, all of the exercises, 3 sets of 50 repetitions. That's 5-0, not 1-5. The reason we're doing such high repetitions is because, again, we are trying to elicit a postural change. And when we are trying to elicit a postural change, we need to accumulate enough time under tension. And if we do the typical 8 to 12 bodybuilding repetition rep range, then we're not going to be able to accumulate that time under tension. So 3 sets of 50 repetitions of each of the different exercises is what you want to do to correct scapular winging. And there you have it. Those are the top 5 strengthening exercises for scapular winging. If you have any type of shoulder pain, mid-back pain, or if you do have a winged scapula, go ahead and give those strengthening exercises a try. And then next week, we're going to be getting into the top 5 myofascial stretching exercises for scapular winging. And then the following week, we'll be going over the top 5 Aldoa exercises for scapular winging. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and drop your questions down in the comment section. I would love to hear your guys' thought, and I would love to answer any questions you guys have. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to continue making these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.